We were doing the Cap 1 departure. I had the autopilot on, and it was bumpy as hell. I want to help more low-time pilots to not end up dead. Hey there, all my fellow aviators. Welcome back to another video on the Fly with Trent channel. My name is Trent. A couple of days ago, 3 days actually to be specific, I posted a reel on Instagram. Too many low-time pilots die every year, how to not be one of them. And in 3 days, it reached 181,000 accounts at 4,400 likes and 180 comments, 177,000 views, which blew me away. So seeing that reel, I posted that because of a recent flight. I did a trip with my wife in the Cirrus down to Palm Springs. And when we departed Palm Springs, and the Palm Springs airport got tall mountains on both sides. And on one end of the canyon, so to speak, there is a lot of windmills. So there's a lot of wind coming through. And I remember doing the departure. We were doing the Cap 1 departure. I had the autopilot on, and it was bumpy as hell. My poor wife was a little scared, and I looked over to her and I said, hey, sure glad I got an autopilot and we're not taking off at night in IMC. And I thought more about that on the flight, and I thought, man, I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't have taken off if the winds were like that and it was IMC and I was in that canyon and those mountains were around. I wouldn't have done that at night. And so in today's video, what I want to do is dive more into what I talked briefly about in that reel. And part of this was actually, I was motivated by the troll comments, because there was, here I am making this safety video and I'm talking about my strike system. And some people are calling me a pussy because I'm too scared to go fly, or in these adverse conditions, or I must really not know what I'm doing, or I'm incompetent. And those were a very small portion of the comments, but I was just like, wow, guys, you really don't get this. I think maybe you need to spend some time going to read the hazardous attitudes and just having a look in the mirror. So the idea behind this video is not to say, hey, like I'm Mr. Macho and I can fly in anything. The idea behind this video is I want to help more low-time pilots to not end up dead. So I think that's a pretty good reason to make a video. So with that said, let's dive into it. I really hope that you enjoy hearing what I've recorded in this video as a result of the research that I've done. And I guess I'll find out when you guys leave me some comments. So let's dive right into it. So every year, far too many low-time pilots lose their lives in aviation accidents, and it's a sobering reality that we cannot afford to ignore. So before we dive into all the nuts and the bolts of this video, I want to share with you some data from the NTSB. According to the NTSB, pilots with between 50 and 300 flight hours have a significantly higher accident rate compared to pilots with over 300 hours. Specifically, the NTSB has found that pilots with between 50 and 300 hours of flight time are involved in accidents at a rate of around 24 accidents per 100,000 flight hours. In contrast to that, pilots with over 300 hours have a significantly lower accident rate, with only about 10 accidents per 100,000 flight hours. So the NTSB's data underscores the critical importance of continuous learning and experience accumulation in aviation safety. Pilots with higher flight hours not only have more experience, but also likely have encountered and learned from a broader range of situations, contributing to safer decision-making and flight operations. So if you'd like to learn more about the data that I'm talking about, I suggest you pick up a copy of the book, The Killing Zone by Paul Craig. And if you're not a fan of the book, you don't need to tell me about it in the comments, because I really don't care what you think about the book, and you don't need to tell me anything about it. Now let's talk about the risks. According to my research, here's a list of the biggest risks that are faced by low-time pilots. And I'm sure that they're faced by all pilots as well. but my research was specifically around low-time pilots in that 50 to 300 hour window. So number one, lack of experience, obviously. Low-time pilots often lack the experience needed to handle challenging flight situations effectively. Inexperience can lead to poor decision making, difficulty managing emergencies, or heightened susceptibility to making errors in flight. Number two is limited exposure to various flying conditions. So, low time pilots may not have encountered a wide range of weather conditions. They may not have gone on many long trips. They may not have an adequate understanding of airspace complexities or airport environments. And this lack of exposure can increase the risk of encountering unfamiliar situations that they may not be adequately prepared to handle. Number three is insufficient training. Low-time pilots may have completed the minimum required training for a given certification, but may not have received comprehensive instruction in areas such as flight planning or mountain flying or navigation or aircraft systems or emergency procedures or what have you. And inadequate training can leave pilots ill-prepared to deal with unexpected challenges in flight, especially if there are multiple unexpected challenges happening at the same time. The next one is overconfidence. And man, oh man, in the comments that I saw on the reel, some of these guys, you would not get me in an airplane with them just based upon the comments and how macho they were and how I can handle anything and cross Windsor for blah, blah, blah. It was mind blowing to me. So some low-time pilots may overestimate rather their abilities or underestimate the risks associated with certain flight operations. Overconfidence can lead to complacency, reckless decision making, and a reluctance to seek assistance or advice from more experienced pilots. In other words, big ego. I don't need anybody's help. Next one is pressure to complete flights. Low-time pilots, particularly those flying for personal or recreational purposes, may feel pressure to complete flights despite adverse weather conditions, potential mechanical issues, or other safety concerns. And this pressure to reach a destination can lead to risky decision making and compromised safety margins. Like we call this get there-itis. So let's give an example. You got a really sweet deal on some hotel somewhere, and you're going to fly your spouse there, and you don't want to lose the money because you didn't get there. So even though the weather's sort of sketchy, you think, I'm going to go anyway because we've got to get our money's worth, and you end up crashing and killing the two of you. So obviously that was not a very good situation. And so that get there-itis can really be a big risk for any pilot, but in particular for low-time pilots. The next one is limited resource management skills. So low-time pilots may struggle with effective resource management, including time, fuel, and cockpit workload. Poor resource management can result in distractions, task saturation, and reduced situational awareness, increasing the likelihood of errors and accidents. Next one is aircraft handling skills, basic stick and rudder skills. Low-time pilots may still be developing their proficiency in aircraft handling, including takeoffs, landings, and maneuvers. Poor aircraft handling skills can contribute to the loss of control and cause accidents, runway incursions, and other safety incidents. And the next one is inadequate risk assessment. So low-time pilots may have difficulty accurately assessing the risks associated with certain flight operations, and I'm going to talk more about that later in the video, such as flying in marginal weather or over mountainous terrain or at night. Failure to conduct thorough risk assessments can result in poor decision-making and an increased exposure to hazards, which obviously can have an undesirable outcome. The next one is limited knowledge of regulations and procedures. So low-time pilots may not be fully familiar with aviation regulations, airspace procedures, and air traffic control communications. This lack of knowledge can lead to airspace violations, communications errors, and non-compliance with regulatory requirements. Next one is pressure to impress or keep up with peers. Just think of how many 20-year-old dudes killed themselves in cars and motorcycles for this reason alone. So low-time pilots may feel pressure to impress others or keep up with more experienced peers, leading them to take unnecessary risks or push their limits beyond safe boundaries. So now that we've talked all about that, I want to also talk a little bit about situational awareness. Situational awareness is your ability to understand what's happening around you and to anticipate potential hazards. From thorough pre-flight planning to staying vigilant during the flight, it is crucial for staying safe. So when it comes to situational awareness, I would suggest you focus on two things. Number one is strategies, and number two is tools. So let's talk about strategies first. Maintaining situational awareness in the cockpit is crucial for flight safety. And so here are some of the best strategies that I believe you can use to achieve and maintain situational awareness. So number one, pre-flight planning. Thorough pre-flight planning is essential for setting the stage for situational awareness during a flight. This includes studying the route, studying the weather conditions, studying alternate airports, and any potential hazards that you are going to be exposed to along the intended route of your trip. Use of checklists. Utilize checklists to ensure that all necessary tasks and procedures are completed before and during flight. This helps prevent oversights that could compromise situational awareness. So use your checklists for climb, use your checklists for cruise, use your checklists for descent and for before landing, and so forth. We interrupt this program to bring you a special message. I realized as I was reviewing this video that there was something that I forgot to include, and that is this. I have built a software-based workflow that I use for every time I am planning a cross-country flight and doing my weather briefing. And in that workflow is a lot of what I talk about in this video, including my strike system, plus a bunch of other stuff. And if you'd like to learn more about that and get maybe a copy for yourself, there will be a link down in the description below for you to do so. Now return you to your regular programming. Take care. Bye-bye. So the next thing we have is instrument scanning. So regularly scan cockpit instruments to monitor aircraft parameters such as altitude, airspeed, heading, and maybe most importantly, if you're in VFR, engine performance. How's the oil temp? How's the oil pressure? How's the carb heat? All of those things are incredibly important. How's your level of fuel? So this helps you to stay aware of the aircraft's current state and any deviations from what you thought the current state was going to be at that point in the flight. Now communication. Effective communication with air traffic control and other aircraft in the vicinity enhances situational awareness by providing information about traffic, weather updates, and changes in flight conditions. So for example, on the recent flight, I chose to do a descent through the clouds in instrument conditions from the west. And I could have come in from the east and done a visual approach, but I wanted to practice the approach. And so I got onto ATC and I said, hey guys, do you have any report? It was cold and there was clouds and I knew I was going to be in the clouds for a couple of minutes. So I said, do you have any reports of icing? And they said, no, we did not. So I felt comfortable to do that particular approach. Now, even if there was trace amounts of ice, I still would have done the approach because I was in an aircraft that was capable of flying into known icing conditions. And I had an escape route where just descending lower because it was relatively high ceilings that day. So I had strategies to mitigate that particular risk. Next one is traffic awareness. So maintain awareness of nearby traffic through visual scanning, which can sometimes be challenging. If the aircraft is a few miles away, you're going to have a hard time seeing it. Listening to radio communications, especially when you are approaching or in the traffic area of a non-towered airport. And then using traffic advisory systems like TCAS, which stands for Traffic Collision Avoidance System, and ADSB, which you're going to have the alerts on both your iPad if you're using ForeFlight, and on if you've got a glass cockpit with a moving map that has traffic on it, you're going to get an alert from that as well. And let me tell you, those alerts are worth their weight in gold. Now we have weather monitoring. So continuously monitoring weather conditions along the route and at the destination airport. So if you have a 2 or 3 hour flight, yeah, I'd be checking that destination airport, and I do this on a regular basis so that you can stay informed about changes in weather patterns and be prepared to adjust your flight plan accordingly to avoid hazardous weather conditions. So now let's talk about tools to help us execute those strategies. So here's my top 5 tools. Number one, have an electronic flight bag. That's basically a device or an application that provides pilots with access to a variety of information, including digital charts, weather updates, flight planning tools, navigation aids, and so forth. The flight bags these days are absolutely fantastic. In addition to a flight bag, which is typically on an iPad, having a GPS system in the plane. It provides real-time information about the aircraft's position, track, ground speed, and other relevant data. GPS systems enable precise navigation and situational awareness, especially in areas where traditional ground-based navigational aids may be limited. I talked about TCAS already. It's not only a strategy, but it's also a tool. So I would highly recommend that you have some type of electronic system in the cockpit with you, helping you to be aware of the traffic that is around you. For me, I'm ultra paranoid about other traffic because I've had a number of incidents in non-towered airspace, so that is a very big one for me. And then weather radar and satellite imagery. So weather radar systems and satellite imagery provide pilots with valuable information about weather conditions along the route, including precipitation, thunderstorms, clouds, and turbulence. And so by monitoring weather radar and satellite imagery, pilots can anticipate and, more importantly, avoid hazardous weather conditions, maintaining situational awareness and flight safety. So for all of those tools, personally, I use ForeFlight on my iPad. I have another copy of it on my iPhone. Plus, I take a backup battery with me on every flight. So I would have to have my battery go dead and my iPad go dead and my phone go dead all at the same time for me to lose out on that. So as I mentioned earlier, after doing that flight down to Palm Springs and back, someone had told me about Mike Patey's points system, or not points, strike, his 3-strike video. And so I went and I watched that video, and in it he talks about how he lost 4 friends in 60 days, and the 3-strike system that he'd created a result. And I'll leave a link to the video down in the description. So as a result of watching Mike's video and seeing his system, I decided to create a modified version of his 3-strike system for my own use, and I want to share with you the current version of it. And as you watch what I explain next, I ask that you keep a couple of things in mind. Number one, my system is not perfect. It's new, and it is will ever be evolving. Number two is I didn't develop it for you. I developed it for me. So if you feel the need to tell me that I'm a pussy in the comments for wanting to be safe, I honestly really don't care. Go ahead and keep your comments to yourself. Just know that if you're leaving them comments in my video, you're actually helping me to get more views. So if you want to be a troll, go ahead and be a troll. I really don't care. My system number three, my system will undoubtedly evolve over time. So depending on whether you watch, when you watch this video, it may have evolved significantly from what I'm about to explain. And at the time of this recording, I have about 750 hours. So here is my strikes that are in my strike system. So known icing along my intended route is a strike. Arriving at a new airport at night is a strike. Night flying in general is a strike. Gusty variable wind is a strike. Questionable weather, which is kind of a broad term, and gusty variable wind obviously is a subset of questionable weather, but there's a lot of different kinds of weather, but that's a strike. Less than 10 hours in whatever plane I'm flying is also a strike. I'm feeling tired, that's a strike. A long trip leg over a remote area at night is also a strike, because I might not, even if I could manage to land the plane, if I'm in a remote area, maybe I'm still going to starve or freeze because I'm so far from anything that nobody can get to me. Any and all IMC departures are a strike. No autopilot for a long trip where I anticipate being in IMC for extended periods of time is a strike. No glass cockpit for that same trip in IMC is also a strike. Now, my iPad could well be the glass cockpit that I'm referring to, but I would rather have a glass cockpit with an MFD and a PFD. And on the MFD, I've got terrain, which I do get on my iPad. And on the PFD, I've got synthetic vision, so I can actually see the terrain. High density altitude is a strike, and at or near max takeoff weight is a strike. So how does all these strikes work? So anytime I get 3 strikes or more, I'm going to take a really hard look at whether or not I need to be going on that trip. Because let's be honest, at this point in my career, unless I'm flying to train students, all my flights are purely recreational. So I really don't have to go. And so again, I want to be having a system to help me make the best decisions possible about whether I should go. All right, so if you've enjoyed today's video, I would love it if you would smash the like button and consider subscribing to the channel. And if you would like to leave a comment, hopefully it will be a positive one. If it's going to be a negative one telling me what a pussy I am for all my strikes, maybe you need to go and read up on the hazardous attitudes, because I would suggest to you that you have some of them. And just know, as I mentioned earlier, if you do decide to let your ego get the better of you and you're going to leave me a negative comment because you think that's going to hurt, you're actually going to be helping me, because the more comments that appear under this video, the more the YouTube algorithm sees it as engagement, and it's just going to show it to more people. So all of you trolls out there, knock yourselves out. Thank you very much, guys. I'll take all the support I can get, even if you think you're not actually supporting me. Thanks very much, everybody. We'll see you in another video soon. Take care. Bye-bye.